Okay, just I guess a disclaimer of sorts, and because the language that I'm starting to use much more now, I'm trying to shock my students certainly in a lot of in the teacher education program in terms of we have to recognize that we need to implicate ourselves in the problem. Right? We need to situate ourselves as in terms of perpetuating, working within a society and a set of social processes that that is at the root cause of a lot of this. So I'm talking about the royal we, not necessarily particular individuals, because I think our practices, our understanding, our excitement, our willingness to be engaged in this work is often a part of the problem in and of itself. Right? And I think it's particularly important when you're working with very challenging groups to demonstrate that when we're working with them, we can still walk away. And with my community, I wasn't living there after a while, looking at the conversion now as an outsider, I was able to walk away. I wasn't living there. So when I'm talking about different processes that contribute to developing a co-op, I'm not part of it necessarily as a researcher. So as community workers, I want to put that certainly out there because we're full of contradictions and tensions, but I believe the difference is people in the room, people involved in this work, we're willing to do something about it. That level of self-reflection leads to some sort of action. It doesn't stay there. Right? So the implication is done away with when you're actually doing something about it. And I think by being here today is certainly a testament to that quality. So this isn't a conversation that's new. So I'm not necessarily providing a lot of new information. It's just providing it in a different way, perhaps, and going from there. Okay. So, purpose of today, connecting the issues, housing, homelessness, affordability, and community. And certainly exploring and critiquing the representations of these issues in particular. Rethinking and reframing the challenges and rewards of the Atkinson experience and the work that we're all engaged in one way or another. And just some points of what I think we can do. And go from there. Okay, I have a motion to pass the agenda. Okay. So the issues. I feel that the issues of housing, homelessness, and affordability, these are constructed, they're manufactured. They're not necessarily, they don't occur naturally in nature. These are social constructions that we're grappling with, and they're a product certainly of our social processes and our practices. And community is not usual part of the conversation, of the dialogue. It's this amorphous term that we want to reach community. We want that to be the output. We want that to be the outcome. But we don't necessarily know how to get that. We certainly hear the rhetoric, and that's often the one area that's left to the side is, okay, we'll build community eventually, but we need bricks and mortar. We need housing. We need people to be, given shelter. Absolutely, I agree with that, right? But there's this one other part, right? What is this place going to look like? How are these people going to be engaged? Right. And so for me, community cannot be constructed. Community grows naturally. Right? And it develops according to the needs of the community. And part of the work that I feel that we should do is how to listen, how to identify those needs by working with people to identify it themselves. And I'll touch a little bit more on that later. So the underlying causes of the decline are largely individual and largely structural. Right? And they're, in the literature, you're certainly around homelessness and housing. There are either individual problems, so physical issues, severe deterioration of mental health, other personal sorts of crises, accessing to income, job, and so on, poverty on an individual level. But you also have the structural issues, the societal factors, social policy that encourages or discourages to an extent social exclusion, certainly underlying causes of poverty, unemployment on a macro level, and certainly the impact of housing shortages. And I feel this is all relevant to our understanding in terms of the interrelated nature of these particular issues. I don't believe you're going to address homelessness by giving housing. We all know that. It's much more complex than that. I don't believe you're going to address a lot of these issues by making it affordable. The underlying causes would put all of those issues aside, all of the solutions that we seek aside. Right? I think part of the task should be identifying the problem, not from necessarily just from our perspective, but from the people living in. And we have numerous people out in the field certainly doing that, and we have to learn how to listen within the academy. We have to learn how to listen certainly within government. And redefine. Get definitions and redefine, which certainly should lead to some sort of action, ideally. So I want to spend the next couple of minutes looking at representation of the issues. Right? And I'm implicating certainly the media, academics, politicians, practitioners themselves, looking at negative motivations of these issues, and I'll touch on that after. Often the focus is on what can't be done. What are the barriers to doing something? Which to me is a particular frustration, because we know how to do a lot of this. And often what limits us is this economic rationale that ends up determining our actions. Now, I'm not being Pollyannish about it. I'm not being idealistic. I just feel it's important to put these things out there. We're often concerned with allocation or reallocation of resources, societal priorities, always hearing they're too complex to deal with from a structural point of view. And of course, money seems to be limited. But money is a construction. Again, I'm not being Pollyannish about it. It's a construction. It only exists because we want it there. The barriers that are there only exist because we wanted to limit what we're doing. So, just some examples I just randomly selected different newspapers. I was able to get some of these. So, from one of the Toronto newspapers, housing funds sought for affordable housing. No mention of community there. Bricks and mortar, still. Other ones, homeless woe not confined to big cities. In that piece, it's still how do we house individuals, not how do we reconnect, how do we build those connections, which is what community is about. Again, I want to stress it's important to stress the bricks and mortar, to have that, but you can't leave that in isolation. You have to include other aspects of the conversation, and that is building a connection. Just wanted to pass this around actually. And of course the back one. Sent this book by Kathy Crow. Many of you may have heard of her, street nurse in Toronto working with the homeless population. She's wonderful in her work. I haven't always seen eye to eye with her. But here's a book of stories, narratives that she has collected, right, from different individuals living on the street. And what is very interesting, the common theme is that they feel there's a connection. Go to any tent city that has been developed, people feel connected to each other. So there's a sense of alienation that we've created that has made it very difficult to sustain community. So if we're building housing, might as well just give everybody a property. So let's not talk about building housing for people, build house for individuals. But that's not what people want. And we can learn from the disenfranchised. We can learn, and I'm just going to pass that around. We can learn from the voiceless. And fortunately, Kathy is giving a voice to the voiceless. And other representations of the issues. Bickering over bike lanes while people sleep in the rain. I love that one. Homeless advantage removed. We can go certainly to a discourse analysis on a lot of these. Yeah. Yeah. I tried to go a pan-Canadian approach, if you will. So solutions, from my perspective, we have to implicate that as being part of the problem, as perpetuating it. Looking from a systems point of view, if you will. And it can be ideologically opportune, certainly in the case of Atkinson conversion. With the Harris government, Conservatives in 1995, they was much more interested in devolving responsibility. So it worked out very well to convert a property into a co-op when government wasn't involved in it. So ideologically, it's certainly there, because it can absolve government and society of their responsibility. That's one of the dangers, certainly, of collective responsibility, right? When we're looking at people living in niches, living in silos. Another one, promoting certainly civil society and the social economy. Now, some of the challenges, the resources, certainly. The capacity is not present, but I also want to argue, after an excellent conversation that I had with a fellow a couple of weeks ago, a youth worker in Edmonton, that it's not that the capacity isn't there all the time, it's that the capacity that is there isn't recognized. So you have individuals that may not have the credentials to be a social worker, but man, they're much better than many social workers that are. So they bring a different set of skills based on life experience. So maybe that's one of the types of conversations we could have.